Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Purposeful Wisdom Podcast. My name is Dawn Christine. Thank you guys so much for being here. If those of you are joining for the first time, welcome in. If those are joining and returning, welcome back. Guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. You know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to spread the message of healing. I have awesome guests that come on every single week that share their knowledge, their expertise, what they're trying to do to help heal this world. So get involved any way you can. I have a wonderful, wonderful person on the podcast today. I have with me the pleasure of introducing you guys to Mr. David Nathanson. He is native of New Jersey and is a multifaceted individual with a passion for cycling, the outdoors, music, and adventure. With a background as both an enlisted Marine and a Marine officer, he dedicated over 30 years to serving his country, commanding at various levels and participating in critical missions, including during Operation IRAQI FREEDOM. David's academic pursuits include bachelor's and master's degrees from prestigious institutions. Despite being a 34-year Marine veteran with exceptional leadership skills, he faced adversity during his career, but emerged resilient. Today, he directs Eagle Oak Retreat, the Texas-based nonprofit empowering combat veterans and first responders to conquer traumatic stress and rediscover purpose and passion. David's journey embodies unwavering commitment to service and the well-being of others. Hi, David. Thank you so much for being here. Do you want me to call you David or Nate? Because I know Nate was like in parentheses. What do you go by?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that very generous introduction. So David is fine, and I'll tell you why. Nate was a nickname given to me during my time in the Marine Corps. And one of the things that I discovered during my journey of healing was I wanted to get back in touch with David. And David was this young, curious, boy from Northeast who wanted, something bigger and better for his life. And so Nate became almost an alter ego for 30 plus years in the Marine Corps. So as I was going through my healing journey, my mentors and my support group, they said, well, hey, we should probably go back to calling you David. So David is probably better because it better represents who I am today as opposed to who I was just a few short years ago.
I love that. I love just getting back to your roots and just unlayering those onions. There's onions, it's like a layer and you just unravel everything. And then after a while, you come back to your true essence of who you are. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I love, number one, I can't thank you enough for your service. I make it point to recognize our first responders, our military, our police, because without you guys, we wouldn't have the freedoms we have here. And like I said to you off camera, it's often unrecognized that our military, our first responders, they're not getting enough of what they truly need when they come back from such intense, overwhelming, horrific places overseas. You guys fought in wars. You guys did a lot that none of us don't even truly understand the sacrifices y'all made. And I can't thank you enough for that. So thank you from me. And I think more people need to be involved in helping our military, our first responders get back to who they were, the essence of who they were beyond war. So I love that you're doing this foundation. I would love to start out explaining to my audience what exactly is PTSD and what does that look like, especially in vets, because a lot of times, me being a former military spouse many years back, we often don't know. We often don't recognize the symptoms of this. We think they're just erratic behaviors. We notice some change, but we don't understand why. So can you go into that for us?
Sure. Before I do that, I want to encourage all the listeners to go to bouldercrest.org. And there's this great video called On Duty. And I would tell you, it's probably the most accurate depiction of what a first responder or veteran experiences when they're having an episode of post-traumatic stress. So I encourage folks to check that out because, Boulder Crest is doing an explanation way better than I can. But I will tell you my own personal symptoms, and so folks can kind of understand where we're at when we're experiencing some of these trigger events. The first thing is hyper awareness and hypervigilance. And what we try to tell folks at Eagle Oak Retreat is it's not our fault we're not broken. That was a product of our training to become very aware, to become very quick to react to, changing environments and situations. But it manifests itself in hyper vigilance and hyper alertness. That can be anything from, driving down the road and not being able to drive across a pothole for fear that it's an IED, or driving past trash on the side of the road and you can watch. I start to white knuckle the steering wheel because, again, the experience of an IED hidden off underneath a piece of trash, improvised explosive device, IED. The other thing is we're also taught to relive and replay missions in our head over and over again to see how we could always be better. Well, that causes us to get into this vicious cycle of reliving traumatic events in the past. We start to second guess. We start to regret. We start to feel survivor's guilt. I know in my case, I lost several Marines when I was in command of a unit in Iraq, and I carried with me for years the guilt that those Marines sacrificed their life executing my orders. So again, that constant reliving of these experiences, and that manifests itself in nightmares. It manifests itself in elevated heart rate, sometimes difficulty breathing, feels like something sitting on your chest. The typical ones that are often displayed in the media is anger and rage, very short-tempered, very quick refuse to respond to things. Again, of response to our training, we are taught to immediately react, to suppress that fight or flight dynamic and to go after the enemy. And so again, it's not, there's no wonder why folks who experience this are going to be a little, amped up and aggressive at times. And then the last piece that I would tell you is there's a terrible element of social withdrawal. And that results, again, directly from our experiences downrange. We are taught very quickly to only trust those who look like us, those in the same uniform, those on our team, which creates a suspicion in us that is very difficult to suppress when you get pushed back into regular society and you have a hard time separating your experiences from reality. Not anybody that you meet is going to be an enemy or want to do you harm. So for me, that's kind of how I explained to folks when I was really gripped with my post-traumatic stress. Those were the sights, sounds, and symptoms that, manifested themselves in my behavior.
Wow. And as intense as that sounds, what's going through my mind, just to be perfectly honest with you, David, is the system's broken. Like, I feel like, when you guys sign up to defend our country, you're being taught these things that are stripping you of who you are as a person. So it's almost as if, in my respected opinion, the system's broken. Even the way you guys are being recruited, like, even though you are recruited and you go through all this training, and yes, I understand to some degree that you have to be mentally aware of your surroundings, but I think overall there could be a way that this could be done without mentally and emotionally harming the soldier. Because the way you're coming in to fight for the freedoms you want to fight for and defend our country, but you're coming out you're coming out empty almost. Like, you have no way of rediscovering who you are. So I think it starts with the system too. Like, things need to change within the way you guys are being trained.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's an extremely insightful perspective. And that's one of the things I'm so excited about, through the Warrior Path program is we are providing that training that most of us should have gotten when we first joined. And again, you're going to come to the service with, pre-existing trauma. I mean, that's just a reality. And particularly in my case, as I started to, peel back, what was the root cause of my post-traumatic stress, I realized that childhood trauma brought with me to the service was only accelerated and exacerbated through the training and the experiences. But you're 100% right. We need to train our first responders and we need to train our military folks left of bang. And in the military, when we say left of bang, it's before an incident occurs. We need to give them the awareness, the ability to have some built-in shock absorbers. So when that traumatic experience comes, they're able to respond instead of react. Right now, the training is heavily skewed towards react. We need to get more balance to respond. And again, The thing that I'm most excited about in the work that I do now is I'm able to bring this training to our heroes, our veterans and first responders, to give them an awareness, to give them practices that allow them to, go from just barely surviving to thriving through, daily use of these practices.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. Even in my field too, I found that a lot of things stem back to childhood.
Mhm.
So, and most of us that get into fields that want to help others, we come from traumatic backgrounds. We come from some sort of trauma, and we often feel like, oh, wow, you know what? If I could prevent in my own way or help in my own way, and help someone else through this, because I know personally what I've experienced in life, right? So we often find ourselves in, and it's almost, I almost feel as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my opinion from what you're telling me, it's almost like the military banks on this. Like a lot of, and I know a lot of people, again, former military spouse, where I've often met soldiers that they haven't had the best of childhood, and the military takes them in, and now they have brothers, and now they have a purpose. And now, but in reality, it's almost like you're taking in these broken souls that just deep down want to feel they belong to something. And now you're stripping them of all the good emotions, and you're reprogramming them off of fear, off of like reprogramming the situation. Like it's almost like I don't even know what to even like, help me out. Like I don't even know what to call it. It's almost like a robotic program. Like forget your good emotions. We're gonna tune in on what you've experienced and almost amplify them to make you guys like robots. That's what it seems like.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say we're robotic, but I will agree with you 100% that I think some of the flaws and the trauma that we come to the recruiting stations with make us an ideal candidate to be recruited and eventually trained and assessed into the ranks. I think it's always best to speak from your personal experience, right? And so for me,
Right.
I was a very sickly child. I couldn't go outside and play. I was very overweight as a young man. I was teased. I was bullied. And for me, I sat in my room and I read stories about Teddy Roosevelt and I read Batman comic books. And I aspired to be something greater than, my current situation at childhood. And then I met my first Marine, and there they were in their dress blues, and they were tall and they were imposing. And I said to myself, there's a superhero that I could aspire to be, because no matter what I did, I was never going to have the good looks and the money of Bruce Wayne, but maybe I could do this. And so for me, that began, my pursuit to want to be, the hero personified that, I identify with for United States Marine. And so, I worked and worked and worked in that. And then I showed up and I was successful, at becoming a Marine. And then we developed this thing that I'm, characterizing as a mask of command, your ability to take that trauma and to compartmentalize it. And I describe it to people that every time I have a traumatic experience, I throw it in my pack. And that rock just begins to carry weight on my shoulders. And you never know when you're going to reach that point where that pack breaks or you break. And so I agree with you 100%. Our childhood trauma, our loss of, maybe family at an early age, or maybe we were not quite fitting in, makes us ideal candidate to go in the military. I don't think that they exploit it for nefarious reasons, but they definitely package it in a way that, here is a home, here is a family, here are people that you can trust, here's where you will be treated and judged and valued based on your contributions, not your skin color, not your race, creed, not, who you are or what you are, just what you can be. And so I definitely agree with you 100%. It makes us ripe. And again, it also makes us very malleable, which I think is important. So while I won't say that we are robotic, particularly in my case, I was always thought to engage this weapon before any other weapon, but you definitely think we are apt to be attracted to that kind of lifestyle.
Right. Absolutely. And that's kind of where my brain couldn't find the words at the time, but it's like it's almost like they bank on that in a way, like secretly, like, to have a place where you can be and feel wanted and accepted. But what I don't understand for the life of me, and this is for as long as the military's been around, is why they don't take care of their brothers and sisters after the fact. Why aren't there enough resources available? I mean, there's trillions and trillions of dollars that we send out all over the world. Why aren't we utilizing these funds and this money to help our military, our police, our first responders, firefighters? Like, you guys put your lives on the front line every single day. And I often feel like, and I experienced this firsthand as the former spouse of a military soldier, you're often tossed to the side after you retire, you come out of service. It's like, okay, here's the VA. Now wait 6 months for you to see a therapist. And you have, again, your backpack now that's broken, holding on by a thread, and you're about to just like lose yourself. Why aren't there more resources for you guys? That's what I don't understand.
I want to touch on something where you started too, which you're thanking us for our service. I mean, you use the comment that not enough people understand what it's like. And I think therein lies part of the challenge. If you go all the way back to, Thucydides, back in ancient Greek times, there, I think, is where you can start to peel apart some of the challenge with modern society. So back then, service wasn't voluntary. It was compulsory. Everybody served. And when the community made the decision to go to war, those warriors were mustered out, and the community would send them off. They would lay down their tools of the trade. They would pick up their weapons of war, and they would go off and do what it was that the polis had asked them to do. And in return, when they came back, they were welcomed back into the community as a citizen. Now, with an all-volunteer force, it's very easy for most of the society to not be impacted by our service. And again, one of my great mentors talked a couple of years ago about the civilian-military divide. And whether or not it's an epidemic or a problem, I'll leave for people much smarter than me to debate. But I do think it sets a condition where people who don't have extensive service, who don't have experience with the service, and when only 1% of the population fighting this last war, I think a lot of the society is out of touch. And I don't think they understand the resource requirements to heal us when we get home. The other piece I would tell you is, this is not a political statement, it's a factual statement. Less and less of our politicians have actually served in the military. So I don't know that there's a full appreciation or understanding for some of the resources that are needed to heal this current generation of warfighters, and quite honestly, to go back and look at the generation prior to us who maybe did not have their traumas properly addressed as well. So I think that's part of the challenge. And I think you're onto something when you talk about, a lot of the society doesn't fully appreciate what it's like for us to go off and again, defend our country and sign that blank check to give our life, for a greater ideal than self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I witnessed it firsthand. I remember when my first ex-husband came back from overseas, and he was a changed person. He was just changed. And I didn't understand the time. I recognized certain things, but I was way younger. I didn't know the signs and symptoms, the erratic behavior. Why? What did I do something? All these questions go in your head. And at the time, I didn't know how to help. I just saw the erratic behavior. I assumed it was because of things over there, but I knew that there were no resources for him right away. He was put on a waiting list, and you go here and you see someone, and it took forever for him to get all of his stuff healed out. So I definitely want to shift and talk about what you're trying to do here to help our veterans, to help our soldiers heal from this stuff, to at least give them the foundations where they can go and be a soldier, but also have a clearer head going in and coming out. So can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So again, at Eagle Oak Retreat, we run a program called Warrior Path, and PATH stands for Progressive and Alternative Training for Heroes. And what we are trying to do, again, is we are trying to retrain our heroes to understand that they are not broken, that there is nothing wrong with them, that they are a product of two things: their experience and their training. We want to put them in an environment again where they can get back to trust and connection, because that's the first thing a veteran loses when they leave, the uniform service. They lose that trust and that connection with folks that they spent either 4 years or 40 years. That bond is very strong. The training and the experiences, creates that. So we've created this program called Warrior Path, and I like to characterize it to people as the SpaceX of post-traumatic growth. We're able to do very quickly what the VA just can't keep up with. And again, that's not an indictment of the VA. It's just a reality. It's very difficult for a veteran to sit in a room with a mental health professional who has not served, who has not spent time downrange, who has not experienced the same things that a combat veteran or first responder who experienced trauma firsthand has experienced. So our program is peer-led. It's non-clinical, it's peer-led. Every person who stands in front of one of our students is a combat veteran and has spent time in that individual's shoes. So that gives a credibility and an understanding that you just can't replicate in a clinical environment. We give them practices to help them regulate. We give them practices to help them to respond instead of react. Some of those practices are transcendental meditation, which is a tremendous tool to help calm when you're feeling outside stressors, or breathing exercises. We put a voice to that trauma, and our thesis is when you speak it to a group that is non-judgmental and trusting, it no longer has power over you. So we give them an environment where they can speak to their experiences, to release some of the shame, some of the guilt, some of the burden that they've been, carrying in that pack. Once we give them their story, we give them an opportunity to figure out what their next story is going to be. So again, we encourage them to realize they can live a life of passion and purpose beyond that trauma. And the basis of this, program, there were very smart folks at the Boulder Crest Institute who came up with this notion that, through traumatic experience can come exceptional growth. And the doctors studied two groups: parents who lost their children, which has to be, in my opinion, probably the worst trauma any human being can experience. And then the other group they studied were the folks that were spent extended time in the Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War. And what they found in both instances was, after the trauma, those folks went on to do amazing things because they used that trauma as a catalyst to do great things. And so that's what we try to bring to our first responders and our veterans: an opportunity for them to come in, to reconnect with who they were, redial their focus on things, give them these practices. And most importantly, our programs don't go after just the symptoms. It goes after the actual issue at hand and tries to give them tools for life. And it's not catch and release. Once you're in Warrior Path, you're part of a family again, and we're there to lock shields with you for the rest of your life. If you're struggling, all you have to do is just say, hey, I need a little assistance here, and folks kind of rush to your side to help you. So it's just an amazing opportunity to help this community live lives of purpose and passion.
Oh my gosh. I'm beyond, we have to try and expand this beyond Texas. I'm dead serious, because there's so many vets out there that need this. Is this a program where people stay, or is this and I air quote outpatient? I know there's no clinicians there, but is this an outpatient kind of environment, or is this something where vets can come in and stay and heal? How does it work?
Absolutely. So it's a 90-day total program. The first week is on site, and it's very intense. It's long days. It's 52 modules delivered over 70 plus contact hours. So that first week they come on to the ranch. They are obviously greeted and treated as, royalty is the minute they come through the gate, excuse me. 3 meals a day. The food is holistic and natural, and it's focused on healing. Again, we believe in teaching them to make better food choices for healing. So we're all about an anti-inflammatory diet to help them kind of deal with some of the physical pains of that service. We give them a very nice, peaceful place to rest at night. All of our students talk about the amazing purple sheets on our beds, right? That company Purple. Oh. So we give them a nice place to rest and a nice place to kind of, feel at home. We give them a very quiet environment on 65 acres of, just
Wow.
peace and quiet in south of Dallas. So that first week is spent on property. After that first week, there's another 83 days of, I wouldn't call it outpatient, but I would call it distance training. And that is facilitated through, Zoom and group calls. We have a wonderful app called My Path that allows them to continue their education and their study, to stay connected. We use that app to reinforce some of the practices. So we go in there and we express our daily gratitude. We go in there and reflect on a daily quote. We go in there and we continue to communicate with each other. So they walk that path again for another 83 days. And at the end of the 90 days, as I said, before, you are now a member of the Path family, and you can, go ahead and reach out for help. There's over 2,000 plus graduates that are now using the application throughout the country. There are 7 locations where Warrior Path is available. And again, it's no cost to the veteran. Our nonprofit status allows us to get some grant money to, no cost to the veteran, the first responder. We bring them in, we care for them, we retrain them, and then we support them to the rest of their life.
I'm just blown away. I think this is so, so amazing, because there's, what this world would look like if everyone just came together and helped heal each other, and a lot of the times, I found even in my profession, a lot of times when you go through something traumatic, there's a lot of money that it costs a lot of money to reach out to professionals, and I get it. I get people have to make a living and survive themselves. I completely understand, but a lot of times when you're so lost and you don't know how to get back on your path, all it takes is for someone good to come along and say, let's help you. They don't care about money. They don't care. It's just like, more people, you need to be like this, really. And I'm just so touched by your organization and all the time and compassion that you were showing these men and women, because they deserve it. They deserve it. And it's not just them that go through it. It's their families that often go through it too. It is a domino effect. And, especially when you have a young family and you have a wife at home or a husband at home and you're off, it's hard not to think about your family, even when you're overseas. And then when you come back, now you're experiencing all these things that oftentimes your family doesn't understand. Your kids may not understand, and they see mom or dad acting different. And they often wonder why. Is there support for their families as well? Like, could these vets come back and involve their significant others and their family members to help them now understand what they've gone through?
Yeah, it's my hope and part of my vision for the foundation going forward. And I will say that, we're new, less than a year in operation, but my vision for the future is exactly what you just described. We would love to see a tiny home village on the property that allows us to offer this to the family. And again, it's just a question of growing responsibly and then operating at scale. And I've challenged myself, in the next 5 years for us to be able to offer that capability. But again, we want to start with trying to heal the veteran and the first
Right.
responder so that they can at least work to exist in a more, stable, loving, nurturing environment in the home. But you're absolutely right that the family is the other side of it, and the extended family as well.
Right.
And we can't forget that, mothers and fathers send their sons and daughters off and they come home differently. And brothers and sisters send, their brothers and sisters off and they come home differently. And for first responders, we send those men and women out every night, and they could end up in a traumatic instance, at the drop of a dime. And so again, the family has to be part of the equation. Again, I have challenged myself to make sure that we get to a position where we can offer services to the family as well. It's just one of those things that you kind of have to, grow responsibly, but absolutely. And I would tell you, and that is a common theme in many of our heroes that come. And again, as I started off, the personal example is the best one to speak from. I mean, I know in my case, I had a 22-year marriage that ended right as my career was ending, again, because I could not reconcile with the trauma I experienced on active duty. I couldn't deal with the trauma that I experienced at the end of my career. I couldn't deal with the personal trauma of losing, one of the most important people in my life. My mother lost her battle to cancer. And at the end of all of this, country music song, if you will, I realized that, my first wife and I were no longer compatible, and I moved off, and the family didn't understand that. And to this day, I'm still estranged from my daughters because I didn't have the ability to explain fully what I was thinking, what I was feeling, why I withdrew, why I was angry, why I was resentful, why I was, overly aggressive, and then, suddenly quiet and withdrawn. And so 100% the families deal with and suffer the same trauma that the first responder and the vet deals with. We do have to get to a position where we can help them as well. What we recommend for all of our heroes when they're going through the program is there's a tremendous book out there written by Ken Falk and Josh Goldberg, and it's called Struggle Well. And it is pretty much the blueprint for our Warrior Path program. And I encourage anybody who's in any all related to somebody who deals with post-traumatic stress to pick up a copy of Struggle Well and just check it out. I mean, they so eloquently break down what it is that the individual is experiencing, how the family is impacted, and how as a family you can embrace some of these, these trainings, these practices to live a more congruent life. So I highly recommend folks to pick up that book as well.
Absolutely. And it's at the end of the day, looking at it from the gray side of things, what you just, spoke about with your daughters too, it wasn't your fault at the time too. You don't know, you can't do something that you don't know. Right. And there is this, but once you know, there's a way that you can correct it. And you realize through what you've experienced, and that's all it was. These were experiences. These were things that you witnessed firsthand. I can't even imagine how you could even explain that to a child. You know what I'm saying? If you can't quite understand that yourself coming back from something so traumatic, and you can't even understand that, how could you explain that to a child? How could you explain that to a spouse? So I think there needs to be also some level of compassion and empathy on the family side too, as frustrating as it might seem, not only for them, because they're trying to understand. So now, they have the anxiety of witnessing their loved one come back and appear different personality wise, just sleep patterns, everything is affected, right? But there has to be some level of understanding and empathy on both parts, to where you're trying to still figure it out, the family's still trying to figure it out, and coming together and trying to figure out is the solution, because that's open communication. So it's learning how to communicate now after the fact, after all these things that you all have experienced in different ways, but nevertheless, it's still traumatic for everybody involved. So I love the fact that you're trying to do this as well in the near future to help extended family understand that this is not what you don't want to be like this as the soldier, as the first responder, as the officer, whoever it is. This is just what you've been conditioned. You've been conditioned this way. And for them to understand that it didn't happen overnight, right? This didn't happen overnight. This was a progressive, paceful thing that happened. So getting back to this quick fix, I feel is often after this quick fix, let's put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound and you're healed, you're better. No, it goes deeper than that. Trauma is deeper than, there's a root. There's always a root. And until you get to the root, you're not reshifting the trauma. You're not setting forth a newer path with the trauma, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I would tell you that, one of the most profound things that I experienced when I went through Warrior Path, almost 150 days ago, was that I spoke about it earlier, that mask of command, that stoicism to hide what it is you're thinking and feeling, the pain that you are living with on a daily basis. You learn very quickly in the military to hide it, right? We have lots of euphemisms in the military, suck it up,
Yep.
put a little dirt on it, drink water, take a Motrin, change your socks, you're fine. And then what we do in the military is we reward that behavior. So your ability to hide, to compartmentalize the things that you're experiencing is rewarded, right? With promotions, with opportunities, with advancement, with, you know, colorful things that you adorn your uniform with. You get rewarded for that hiding. And so, you know, the one thing I will take ownership of, particularly with my daughters and my ex-spouse, was for me, it was just hide behind it and don't talk about it, and don't share, don't be vulnerable, don't explain to, you know, your spouse why it is you're unsettled, don't explain to your spouse why it is you've changed and why the relationship had to change and things were just different because you were now different, or an inability to be vulnerable and to show your daughters you are hurt and that you are wounded and that, you know, you're not Superman, right? And so I will say that the nice thing about the training that I've been able to receive is I'm okay now being authentic and being vulnerable and admitting to folks, you know, I am injured, I am wounded, but I'm still a warrior and I'm going to dust myself off and keep moving forward. So, you know, the one thing I will say is that I do own my part in, you know, traumatizing myself from a family perspective. Now I encourage everybody that I speak to, take that mask off, be authentic, be genuine, be vulnerable, because at the end of the day, our happiness is going to be directly tied to the connections we make with our 3 to 5. And that's what we talk about at Warrior Path, is your 3 to 5, those 3 to 5 folks who are your mentors, who are your friends, your confidants, your supporters, the folks that you turn to when you need assistance. You have to be connected with those people, right? And you have to be trusting and open to everybody you meet, right? Because you never know, that next person that you meet might be just like you, suffering in silence. And if you don't share your story, if you aren't vulnerable and authentic, you just miss an opportunity to be an expert guide for that person, to put them on a path to healing as well. So I would say, you know, for anybody who listens to this, if you're like I was for 30 plus years, just hiding behind that mask, that, you know, that shield, don't let anybody see that I was hurting, you know, don't let anybody see emotions, stay stoic. That is probably doing more damage than you possibly could imagine. And it might be time to let go and let people see you. Ergo, our comment and conversation about, I'm back to being David instead of Nate, right? I am that young, curious, wide-eyed, scared little boy who's trying to find his way in the world. Well, now I'm home trying to find my way in the second half of my life. And I just want to be, you know, completely connected and authentic with people. So if you're listening now, please, that which you were rewarded for in your time of service, you have to ask yourself if it's still serving you in this chapter of your life.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with that, because, you know, at the end of the day, authenticity, people need connection. People need to be connected to other people. And that might be one of the small, as you're talking, I'm thinking of this, that might be one of the issues that needs to shift within the military. Like, people need to show emotion. People can't just bottle things up. There's this persona that we, you know, especially military is all about, it's ego. It's be strong, confident, don't show emotion, you're tough, you represent. But why can't the military in all branches be that, but vulnerable? There needs to be a healthy balance. And that's what I meant, I think, why I used the word robots before, because robots don't have emotion. They don't know how to show. And in a way, it's like, if you show that, you're considered weak. I mean, and in society, people have this fear of showing weak. They see it as weakness, and I can't stand that. I think vulnerability is the most beautiful thing that all of us have in our lives. And to show that side of ourselves, and that loving side of ourselves, that not only can we be strong individuals, but what most of society calls weakness is the strongest part of ourselves. Do you know what I mean? And if our armed forces saw that and utilized this healthy balance between the two, even if this is, instead of, okay, there's this debriefing or whatever you guys call it, of, okay, we're going to talk about this and reprogram it over and go over it over and over. No, let's talk to someone that can sit down with us and help us process what the hell we just endured and let our emotions out. If you're in a group of brothers and sisters and you're all within each other and you're why can't you be vulnerable? Why can't you talk about these things while you're in the service so that you can release that in a healthy way? Because oftentimes when you come home, all you're trying to do is put the Band-Aid on the gunshot wound. You're going to numb yourself out. You're going to go to alcohol. You're going to go to narcotics. You're going to go to whatever eases the pain that you forget. But at the end of the day, it's still there. The root is still there. So finding the root and being able to be vulnerable in all branches, in all first responders, police, firefighters, military, like even nurses, doctors, therapists, all of us need to be vulnerable. We all need that. That's our true authentic selves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And as we sit here and talk, I think back to, in 2008, I was in Iraq and I had just lost, 4 Marines to an IED attack. And I remember at that moment, steadying myself to show no emotion so that the command around me, my Marines and sailors, would not see me falter. And in my mind, I was like, that's what they needed to see to continue on the mission, because we still had a lot left to do. And as I sit here and think about it, I'm reflecting on, we memorialized those 4 Marines. And I can remember when it was time for me to give my remarks, I addressed it head on. I knew I was going to be emotional. And I remember telling everybody in attendance, don't mistake my emotion for weakness. And as I sit back now and I reflect on that time, what a stupid thing to say. What a stupid thing to say. What I should have done was I should have just showed my love and my compassion for those Marines. I should have celebrated their sacrifice in the best way possible. And that is to show the depth of my care, my concern, and my love for them by letting that emotion out and being authentic. Right. But I was afraid that if I did, I would be judged. I would be seen as weak, or unable to handle the rigors of combat. And therefore opportunities might be closed off for me in the future. The enlightened, retrained me now realizes I traumatized myself at that moment. I denied myself the grieving process, a healthy grieving process, which in turn meant for so many more years, I carried guilt. I carried remorse. I carried regret. I carried all of this blame because at the moment where I should have grieved properly, I hid it. I suppressed it. I threw the rock in my pack and I said, nope, we're not going to deal with that one now. And years later, when I finally hit my low, I realized that I went ahead and I traumatized myself through that behavior. So I agree with you 100%. To me, a Renaissance man who is in touch with his feelings, who is authentic, who is able to do the things to show an example of, multifaceted emotions, to me, is the essence of a man. It's not the person who can suppress it and hide it, right? It's very easy. People always ask me, why is Batman my favorite superhero, not Superman? Well, for me, Superman, how hard is it to be brave when you're indestructible? But Batman, just a man with a lot of money and great hair and cool toys. And night after night, he threw the outfit on and he went out there and he risked it all because he was able to be harmed. And so for me, that's the goal in the rest of my time on the planet, is to try to show other men and women that, sometimes it's being vulnerable that makes us a better role model. And just please don't miss an opportunity to show emotions. Don't miss an opportunity to connect with somebody on a deep personal level. Don't miss an opportunity to tell your story of trauma, because you just don't know who's going to be listening and who you might help. And for me, I don't ever want to miss an opportunity to help somebody live a life of purpose and passion.
I agree. And I'm going to correct you one thing here, mister. You're not stupid. Seriously, you didn't know what you didn't know. Seriously, you're not stupid for, you say you look back, but that's all you knew at the time. It really is. That's all you knew. And this is what you were taught. You taught to be strong and not show emotion. And it's the coulda, woulda, shouldas, now. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. So again, a lot of us, we go back and we live in the past, and I'm guilty of it too, with my own, traumatic childhood and things like that. We tend to go back there sometimes and go, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Oh, if I only did it this way. But now that you know, this is where you're making the difference. You know, you're practicing it every day. You're doing these things every day to be all these beautiful sides of yourself now. And now you get to share that with other men and women that are lost and that don't know where to go and that feel are carrying the weight of the world, these rocks in their backpack. You are that inspiration for them to cut that backpack off and address the rocks.
Absolutely.
So don't sell yourself short for that. I'm serious.
Not that I noted. Thank you. I will strike that from my stump speeches. I'm not stupid. I was untrained.
That's right. You did not know. You don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And that's what you have to chalk it up to. So for those of a lot of my viewers view the videos, but for those who are listening, can you please tell my audience where to go if they know someone that's in need? If you yourself are a vet, first responder, where can people go to get this help, to get in touch with your foundation?
Absolutely. So just the website is eagleoakretreat.org. They can go on the website. It's got all the information about, the retreat and the founders. And I will talk about the founders before we finish because that story needs to be told as well. And they go all the way down to the bottom of the first page. And on the right-hand side, there's a yellow splash banner and it has information where folks can click to apply as a first responder or as a veteran. And underneath that, also there's opportunities for folks to, support us as a volunteer or maybe a financial donation. So it's on the right side, bottom of that first page. The Watanabe family, an amazing story, very successful business people from Hawaii. 2020, they were getting ready to retire. They saw a news story about the plight of the 22-a-day veteran suicides and some of the challenges of men and women who left the service in Hawaii. And they decided right then and there to answer the call to leave a legacy for, first responders and veterans to live a better life. And they took a leap of faith. They bought 65 acres in Texas. They designated 11 of it for the foundation, and they stood up the Eagle Oak Retreat Foundation. And so through their generosity and their big hearts, we have a place now here in Texas that veterans from all over the country can come in and get this healing. So again, eagleoakretreat.org. The information is on the right-hand side down the bottom of the website. Just click on one of those boxes and they can get all the information they need. If you go to About Eagle Oak Retreat in the center up on the top, you can see the tab that talks about our leaders. My link is on there. That information, how to get in touch with me is there. They can email me directly at david.nathanson@eagleoakretreat.org. And again, I'd be more than happy to help them navigate the process and to get them talked into a program. Again, we are connected with Boulder Crest Institute. There's 7 different locations throughout the country where Warrior Path is offered. So again, we try to be in locations where there's high concentrations of the at-risk community. But again, it all starts with just going to that link and having the courage. And I do want to address anybody who hears this who thinks asking for help is a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate testament of strength to recognize that you need help. And I will tell you that, especially in my own case, I couldn't do it without people helping me. I didn't even know that I needed it as badly as I did. And when I finally accepted the assistance, it was like a life-changing moment, the most impactful thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I've experienced quite a few things. So again, eagleoakretreat.org, or hit me up directly. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody. And I just hope that anybody listening takes advantage of the opportunity to live a life of purpose and passion. And I will double down on what I said earlier in the podcast. My goal for Eagle Oak Retreat is to be the epicenter of healing for not just veterans and first responders, but anybody who's in need in the center of this great country of ours. Mental health issues, to me, are the epidemic of the future. It's already here. And I think, we need more men and women who receive this training so that we can help each other. And you said that earlier, and I commend you for recognizing that. It has to start with us loving our neighbors and helping our neighbors. So let me turn the tables on you and say thank you for what you are doing, for bringing awareness, for having a platform for folks like us to come on and talk about these things. But you are the one that is making this happen. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving us an opportunity to talk today.
Thank you, David. I really thank you so much. No, I'm right there with you. I want to change the world too. And there's so many of us that are in pain, and we've come through, forget it. I mean, it's just, if we can help heal this world, there's so much chaos out there. There's so much hate and just this country is divided. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And to give people hope, that's what this world needs. This world needs love. This world needs hope. This world needs healing. We need to stop acting like a bunch of barbarians, and we need to learn how to help each other, and we need to help embrace our differences and accept our diversities and just be able to just be. There's so much criticism in this world of, if they don't look like me, if they don't act like me, then it's disgusting. Like, we need to come back to that. We are authentic in our own way. We need to be able to live authentically and show up for ourselves and not be scared to be vulnerable and be our authentic selves without the rest of the world criticizing what we're trying to do. And if more people wake up, in plain English, and stop feeding into fear and start living for themselves and doing right by each other, we could heal the world. We can. And that's all I'm trying to do. So I appreciate that you see that, and it means a lot to me. And I'm grateful that you have this platform to come on and give hope to so many people out there that are looking for that. And guys, David is right. This is the most, this shows strength. This is the ultimate form of strength. It is not about the ego. Take the ego away from it. It's about you. If you are trying to heal yourself from things, if you are trying to move past things and find healthy coping skills to move past these things and understand what you went through from people that were in the field, that were on the front lines, that understand, reach out to David. He's there to help. His team's there to help. Like, I can't thank you enough for just being on here today and sharing your story and sharing this beautiful retreat with all of us, so that you are impacting so many lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate that.
Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Don't forget, share, like, subscribe, help me spread this healing. Get in contact with David. I will leave all his information in the description box. And until we see each other again, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.